Tony Stark was Hydra. Simple. Now, we know he's Doctor Doom. The comics say he's Doctor Doom. You believe that? Believe this. Because what if this hero that saved this universe was secretly working for this enemy, Hydra, the entire time? This dude that said, I am Iron Man for real, was actually a sleeper agent for the most dangerous organization in the world. Very possible. Not Loki, not Ultron, not even Thanos, but Hydra. Think about it. Hydra spent decades infiltrating governments, militaries, and intelligence agencies across the globe. Their philosophy was simple. If you cut off the head, two more shall take its place. Simple. So what if the greatest infiltration wasn't in S.H.I.E.L.D.? What if it was inside the Avengers themselves? Because when you look closely at Tony Stark's actions across the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a disturbing pattern starts to appear. A pattern where Tony repeatedly builds weapons that empower Hydra, it weakens the Avengers, it divides the team, and ultimately ensures the Avengers lose when it matters most. And the strangest part, the one person who seemed to understand what Tony really was Doctor Strange. Now, with that now being out there, why do you think Doctor Strange would convince Tony Stark to sacrifice himself for the greater good? Doctor Strange was one of the only people who could really figure out who Tony was before anyone else. And I'm about to dive deeper into that because Tony Stark was Hydra's ultimate sleeper agent. I'm not gonna hold you. Come on. In this allergy season, so bear with me. Now, not only was Tony Stark Hydra's ultimate sleeper agent, he was also Hydra's greatest strategy. Now, Hydra doesn't conquer the world through brute force, they infiltrate. In Captain America Winter Soldier, we learned that Hydra secretly took over S.H.I.E.L.D. from the inside. For decades, they quietly placed agents in the positions of power. Politicians, scientists, military leaders, kind of like America. And their endgame, no pun, Project Insight, 3 massive helicarriers capable of assassinating millions of people before they ever became a threat. As Alexander Pierce explained, Hydra doesn't create chaos, Hydra creates order. But here's a strange detail many fans overlook. Those helicarriers were built using Stark technology. The engines, weapon systems, targeting programs, kind of like Elon Musk. Why does he have such a touch in the military? Right. All of them were developed by Tony Stark. Now, maybe that's coincidence, but there's no such thing as coincidence. And after all, Tony Stark's company supplies weapons worldwide. But Hydra isn't stupid. If they were planning a global genocide machine, they wouldn't rely on technology they didn't control, which raises a disturbing possibility. What if the man building the weapons, Tony Stark, was already on their side? Because Tony, he gonna get that bag. And plus, we know how heartless Tony Stark can be, especially when it comes to supplying weapons. He doesn't really care. And at the same time, his dad had a huge involvement. So it's like, who's to say Tony didn't just pick up where his dad left off? Now let's think logically and chronologically, because there's that Ultron incident. Because years later, something even stranger happens, right? In Avengers Age of Ultron, Tony Stark creates this artificial intelligence designed to protect the Earth. Ultron. But almost immediately, Ultron becomes genocidal. And only something like that, a mentality like that, can be coded. And if it does happen, it's gradually over a longer period of time. He decides humanity itself is the problem and attempts to wipe it out. On the surface, it looks like Tony making a catastrophic mistake. Tony Stark is the smartest engineer on the planet. We've never seen him make mistakes before. Tony Stark doesn't make mistakes when it comes to making bombs and explosives. And you have to keep in mind Tony's mental. He only likes making bombs and explosives because he's good at it. Like a Unabomber or something. And you gotta see, this is a man capable of creating nanotech suits, time travel GPS systems, and advanced AI like Jarvis. Yet somehow, the most important AI he ever built immediately turns evil. That doesn't sound like an accident, it sounds like a setup. Because Ultron's attack on Sokovia created global devastation. Cities destroyed, thousands dead, and the result? World governments decided superheroes were too dangerous to operate freely. Exactly the kind of fear Hydra thrives on. Now let's talk about Sokovia a little bit more, the Sokovia Accords to be more specific. Let's enter Captain America's Civil War. After Sokovia, governments introduced the Sokovia Accords, a treaty designed to regulate and control enhanced individuals. Tony Stark supports it immediately. In fact, he becomes its biggest advocate, meaning Steve Rogers strongly opposes it. Why? Because Steve sees the obvious danger. If governments control superheroes, they become political weapons. Steve says it perfectly. If we sign this, we surrender our rights to choose. But Tony insists. Why would he push so hard for a law that weakens the Avengers? And him more than anything. Because Hydra's philosophy has always been about control through fear. Divide powerful people, put them under surveillance, then turn them into tools of the state, which is exactly what the Sokovia Accords accomplished. And Tony Stark is the one selling it. Why? And you could say because he's technically not an enhanced human, but he is, clearly. I feel like anyone that's a part of the Avengers is considered an enhanced human, so you should not be going for this. Unless you're more focused on the political gain. Why would he be more focused on the political gain of this? He's with Hydra. If you like what you're hearing or agree, hit that like, because now we got to talk about the Bucky problem. Because we get one of the most emotional scenes in the entire MCU. Tony discovers that Bucky Barnes killed his parents, and Tony completely loses control. He attacks Bucky in a blind rage, and here's the strange thing. Tony Stark is a genius, a man capable of complex strategic thinking even during battle, yet here he suddenly acts like a reckless emotional child, and it definitely looks off-brand. Why? Because Bucky wasn't just any assassin. He was Hydra's most dangerous weapon. And more importantly, Bucky's memories were coming back. He was remembering Hydra's missions, right? Remembering people, remembering secrets. What if Tony realized something terrifying in that moment? What if Bucky might recognize him? If Tony had ever interacted with Hydra leadership, Bucky would know. And the last thing Hydra's sleeper agent would want is a living witness, right? So of course Tony Stark gonna turn up. Being the genius he is, he's gonna make it seem as if he's emotional about his parent dying, his dad dying, whatever, his parents dying, I guess you could say, and just use that pretty much like a child when they get caught or anyone that gets arrested, they're in an interrogation room and they're like crying about it. They're crying about the fact that they potentially just got caught, not because of what's really going on, what everybody else is really talking about. It's the fact that their internal emotions are saying, oh, I'm getting caught. So the emotion comes out in some childish way. And that's what I think Tony Stark did, which is why it looks so juvenile when he's attacking Bucky. It's not like strategic. He's not thinking the way he should be thinking, because it's the first time he's ever felt this, like, oh, I'm about to get exposed. Now let's jump to Avengers Infinity War, right? The missing phone call. Aliens suddenly attack New York. The fate of the universe is at stake. Tony Stark fights alongside Doctor Strange and Peter Parker. W. Spider-Man, my favorite superhero. But there's something he doesn't know. He never calls Steve Rogers. And remember, Tony has Steve's number. Steve literally says earlier in Civil War, if you need me, I'll be there. Yet Tony never makes the call. Why is that? Because I think if Steve Rogers showed up, the Avengers will reunite. And a united Avengers team might actually stop Thanos. No cap. Instead, the heroes remain divided. Earth's defenders are scattered and Thanos wins. Exactly the outcome Hydra would want. Because here's global collapse, here's mass chaos, and here's billions dead. Now let's talk about how Doctor Strange knew, because I hinted at it earlier, and now I need to reinforce it. Because there's one character who might have seen Tony through and through, right? There's one character that might have seen through Tony's plan, and that would be Doctor Strange, easily. Using the time stone, Strange views 14,605 possible futures, and he says only one timeline results in victory. But here's the suspicious part. In that timeline, Tony Stark dies. Think about that. Strange isn't just seeing possible battles, he's analyzing the entire timeline. If Tony truly was Hydra's sleeper agent, Strange would eventually discover it. And the only way to defeat Thanos and eliminate Hydra's ultimate infiltrator will be to ensure Tony sacrifices himself. Strange even tells Tony later, if it comes to saving you or saving the kid or the time stone, I would not hesitate to let either of you die. It almost sounds like he already made the choice. Now, let's break it down. My favorite part, the theory in full, connecting everything. If Tony Stark were secretly Hydra, his actions suddenly make terrifying sense. He builds technology used in Hydra's helicarriers. He creates Ultron, triggering a global disaster. That disaster leads directly to Sokovia Accords, dividing the Avengers. He attempts to eliminate Bucky, a man who could expose Hydra's secrets, and Tony Stark for being a part of Hydra. He refuses to reunite the Avengers when Thanos arrives. And finally, Doctor Strange ensures Tony sacrifices himself in Avengers Endgame, permanently removing Hydra's most powerful infiltrator. Tony Stark doesn't die as a villain, he dies as a hero, which is a perfect cover, because history will never question him, the Avengers will honor him, and statues will be built. Children will grow up believing he saved the universe, and Hydra's greatest agent will never be suspected. So in all actuality, Doctor Strange is low-key the GOAT. Tony Stark is an op. And if y'all didn't know, Dr. Doom and Reed Richards are iconic movie rivals, right? So rooted in college jealousy and shared intellect, a pivotal scarred experiment caused Dr. Doom and Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, to switch bodies. So technically, who we saw in Fantastic Four is technically Dr. Doom, because they switched bodies in college, right? So with Dr. Doom posing as Reed and then posing as Tony Stark, who's to say Hydra wouldn't also be a pit stop of his? Now, obviously, this is just a fan theory, but sometimes the most interesting stories are hidden between the lines. I'm telling you, when Doomsday comes out, and I predicted it, y'all gonna come back here and y'all gonna be commenting like crazy. When you rewatch the MCU with this theory in mind, Tony Stark, he really starts looking a lot less like a hero and a lot more like Hydra's greatest success. Because remember Hydra's motto, cut off the head and two more shall take its place, right? But what if one of those heads was wearing an Iron Man suit this whole time? And it's just nutty to even think about, because Iron Man was up there for the leader of the Avengers. He might even still be seen as that, right? So kind of nutty. Now that's my theory. If you enjoyed this theory, drop a comment and tell me, was Tony Stark secretly Hydra? Do you think so? Or is this theory just completely insane? Do you think so? Put it in the comments. And if you want more deep Marvel theories, Pixar theories, all theories, hidden movie meanings, all that, mind bending, all that, and breakdowns, that's me. But hit that like, subscribe for more of them. Turn on the notifications. I don't say that enough, but like, you know, who cares at the same time? Because the next theory might completely change how you see that favorite movie you always watch and never question, never pay attention to, or just have on in the background. I'm going to get you. For sure. One of these, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you. Stay smooth.
Ridiculous, I don't paint.
And what do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
That's not bad.